really a thrill for me to be up there in front of you people, for people that are really interested in what I'm interested in. You know, we're a small group. When you take a look at the population in general, there's not a lot of people that really know one butterfly or another and really care. And so when we're in a group where people really do care, it makes it fun and special for me. Well, yes, Heidi did kind of lower the boom on me. Skippers, I said? Okay, well, the skippers are a difficult group, let's say. There are some that are fairly easy, and we'll love to look at those first. But there's some that are very, very difficult. Now, you know the experts that deal with skippers. You probably realize most of them identify them by looking at the male genitalia. That's what they do. So they don't go out and look in the field and say, well, now look at the spots on here and the stripes on this and this and that. This is such and such. They don't rely on that. Most of the experts, the ones that are really into skippers, do dissections of the male genitalia to describe the species. And so that shows you how difficult a group it is, because we don't have to do that with the other butterflies. Now, before we get started, I'm going to go quickly, just in the introduction. But skippers are a very unique group. In fact, they're a very controversial group. Scientists, there's a lot of scientists that actually believe that they're more closely related to moths. And there's others, there's one right there. They think that, you know, this is really just a moth offshoot. There are other scientists that say, no, when we study them, they're really more closely related to the butterflies. However you want to argue the issue, they're unique. They're different. In fact, in the butterfly world, we talk about true butterflies and skippers. That's how unique they are. The true butterflies are the other families, and then we have the skippers. So however you want to argue it, this is the situation we have. Now, I want you to know that first of all, the skippers are basically a tropical group of butterflies. There's no question about it. They're extremely abundant in Africa, where I spent 3 years of my life. Many species of skippers in Africa. And in the neotropics, where I've spent a considerable amount of time too, they're very abundant down there. In fact, in many regions, they make up at almost, if not, 40% of the total species population of butterflies are skippers in the tropics. Now, when you get further north, the numbers drop off because they're not as well adapted to the northern climates as they are in the tropical region. In fact, the number of skippers in our state, we have a percentage of around 18%, so which is a little less than 1 in 5 skippers. That's still a large group, but it's not like what you see in the tropics. It's a really massive group there. So anyway, what makes these unique? David, I just want to thank David so much again before I get started on this, because he just gave us a wealth of material, and boy did he help me out. If I have to sit here and talk about larvae and food plants tonight, I never get anything done. And he took care of that beautifully for us, and people don't realize the amount of work David has spent in the field doing this research. I mean, any of you that are researchers, you know what it takes to do this. And David has spent a tremendous amount of hours in the field and in home, in his lab, working on these butterflies. So you really need to appreciate what he's done, and I certainly do. This really helps me out tonight. So, well, let's look at the skippers. There's two groups, as David says, so a lot of this I go through because it's redundant to David. We have the spread wings and we got the grass skippers. Characteristics of them. Most butterflies have rounded heads. Their heads are relatively round. Not skippers, they're kind of flat and broad. Looks like somebody kind of stepped on their head. Boom, and they're flat. And so this makes them unique. Their bodies, this is where the moth comes in, I think. The bodies are relatively large and stout and very moth-like relative to their size. I mean, some of our skippers are tiny butterflies. And in the tropics, a morpho has the same body size and has a wingspan of about 15 times larger. And so, relative to their bodies, their wings are pretty small. The antenna tips are curved, and they're sometimes really well hooked as well. Whereas butterflies, true butterflies, have knobs on their antenna. So it makes them totally different. So they're pretty easy to find. Also, they have a very fast, erratic flight pattern. And in fact, I think it was Jim Scott is the one who coined the word. He said, you know, they kind of skip along. And that's when it caught on and says, oh, let's call them skippers. Because they kind of skip along. because that's how they fly. They're kind of erratic in the way they do it. It's like they're skipping rather than flying. And they're generally small in size relative to a butterfly. I mean, I don't think I even have one in my flight collection here that is even 2 inches wingspan. I think the biggest one is like 1 3/4 inches. So they're relatively small. Okay, first group of the spread wing skippers, as David showed you, he showed you a picture of one, and you'll see it repeatedly in mine. They basically lay their wings flat when they're at rest. That's why they call them a spread wing. They spread their wings. The larvae, as he told you, feed on dicots, and they feed on plants other than grasses. And it's a wide variety of grasses, and let's don't get into that tonight. I don't want to get into all the plants. I don't want to get into the plants. I don't have time for that. You can talk to David afterwards about all the food plants, okay? Because we've got a lot to do just with the adults tonight. In fact, probably way too much. The males display, actually it's not a stigma fold, this is a costal fold. And I'll show you this when we get our first picture of it. The male scent glands are located on the leading edge, the top leading edge, and it's like a fold. They're in there. And so this tells them from the grass skippers. Okay, this was taken from my backyard on Buddleia. I know that's a bad word. It's not a native plant. But this was in my backyard in Gig Harbor, and this is the silver spotted skipper. This one is probably the easiest one to identify we have, and it's also our largest one. So let's start with something that we can say, we get an easy start. This is the dorsal surface of the silver spotted skipper. Oh, by the way, I've got a lot of information on here to speed up things so you can look at it yourself. The specimen, the date it was collected, is going to be posted for you. This was collected on June 27th, so it's basically a June flying butterfly, which is pretty true. Late May to June is its flight period. The name is down below, silver spotted skipper, the species name, and subspecies. There's 2 subspecies of this. The one I'm picturing here is Californicus, which is one on the west side. Also, the more common eastern side is subspecies Claris. It's Claris, a nominate species. And that flies all the way, I even saw that in South Carolina where my daughter lives. So it flies pretty much in the whole United States. But the Californicus is basically the west coast. And you can see the size of this one is about the largest one we're going to see, 1 3/4 inches. That's still pretty small, but that's large for a skipper. This was collected by Lake Merwin in Cowlitz County. Now, how do we identify this thing? Well, first of all, the shapes of the wing and the size of it. I think it's pretty obvious. The 4, let's see here. These 4 spots right here are pretty consistent with all the members of this species. 4 golden spots, and also the 3 little subapical white spots are pretty consistent. And the hind wing is immaculate. In other words, no markings whatsoever. So that's very, very characteristic of this. But, as you know before, if you've listened to me talk before, I love descriptive common names. I don't like something like the Johnson's hair streak, I'm sorry. I don't like somebody's name for an insect. I like description. This is called the silver spotted skipper. Get it? That is a silver spot. In fact, it's almost like a silver band, really. It's not really one spot. It's a series of spots that are all connected there. But this is how you're going to identify this. Many places to find this. In western Washington, like I said, I found it in Gig Harbor. It's in Pierce County. It's very common in Mason County. David shows you all the larvae that he saw. Over in Tahuya, it's very common. And you get down into Cowlitz County, Lewis County, it's relatively abundant. So you don't see large numbers of them at any one time, but they're well distributed along the whole coast. Okay, so this is our first skipper. Are we okay with this one?
I want to know how to sex these things. You're talking about the coastal folds?
Yeah. Let me show you that. It's not very good on this one because sometimes they don't show very well. It's this right here.
With a bit of a gold streak in it?
Yeah, actually it's kind of folds over. The wing kind of folds over. Sometimes you'll see some of the specimens where it's folded out and where all those scales are exposed. But many times it's folded over, so they're covered. But they are sitting right there. So this is the spread wing characteristic for the males, is that fold right there.
Okay, so that's a boy.
Okay, the cloudy wing. Oh, by the way, one last thing on this. This is basically a tropical genus, and I mean, we get down into Mexico and you get down into South America, and there's many species of this. We only have one here, so this is a relatively common genus in the tropics. Same with this one. This is also more common in the tropics. We only have one species of this too. The only cloudy wing we have, the northern cloudy wing. If you look at the dorsal surface of it again, once again, we can see the statistics for yourself here. You have two basic lines right here, these bars, we call them, translucent bars. This kind of typifies that the color is mostly brown. There's a few other spots as you see here too, but basically it's pretty brown and just with those two little bars. And it's also relatively large skipper. It's an 1.25 inches. It's not as big as the silver spotted, but it's relatively large. Also, there's a bend in the, I don't know if you noticed this or not, but there's a little bend in the leading edge of the wing, which might be helpful to identify. What I'm really trying to do is give you characteristics that's going to help you in the field. You're not going to be able to sit there and dissect genitalia out of butterflies. And it's just, I'm trying to do the best I can and give you characteristics that help me identify it, that might help you. And if any of you others have any pet ideas that are different, I would like to hear them, because it's nice always to learn more things about each of these skippers. The ventral surface, you have your banding here. If you look, you'll see that you have kind of these round bands here, but basically it's just a mimic of the dorsal surface. This butterfly is never really common anywhere. The only place I found it abundant was in Swakane Canyon. And I was there one June and I thought, what is this? This must be the actual hibernating spot of all of the cloudy wings, because I must have seen 15, 20 of them along a stretch along the road. That's before they tore the road up and made a new road when it was real brushy. And they were really abundant in there. It was June.
Where?
This is in Swakane Canyon, which is right above Wenatchee, just right above Wenatchee. And but otherwise, you see kind of one here, one there. I don't know if you've seen this in Tahuya, but Elfendal Pass is where I saw one up there, so it's in Tahuya. And I have seen it down in Calais County, Lewis County. I've seen it many places. I've seen it in Yakima Canyon, I've seen it in Oak Creek, but never a lot of them. I mean, I might see one. I'm out for a day and I see one. But in Swakane is when I really ran into a number of these. The dusky wings. Okay, now we got some challenges. There are 4 species of these. We're going to start with the easiest one, okay, which is Ichthys. The Rhinus is another tropical species. They're very common, lots of numbers of these in the tropics. We have 4 species in the state, and the dreamy dusky wing is the easiest of the 4. So we're going to start with that one. Now, the best way, oh, there's that Costco fold, open. Can you see it now?
Yeah.
Okay, so you can see that. The easiest way to help you identify this in the field is, take a look right here. There's no translucent spots. It's really our only dusky wing that lacks translucent spots. Now, when I show you the other 3, you'll see what I'm talking about. If you say, but I don't know, I don't get it, you'll see them. The other 3 will all have them. This one does not. Also, this is very unique in dusky wings. Look at this chain of spots. And inside of that is this nice, solid, one color band. Now take note of that, because that is going to be the best way for you to identify this in the field. Also, it's an early flyer. This is June, but you're going to see it in May. Probably more commonly, but I have seen it in as late as mid-June. But it'll be out in May, so it's an early flyer. So no apical translucent spots, but that irregular band, or the regular band, oh here, this also might be useful. Not only that, it's 2-colored. We don't have, the others don't have that. Notice it's light and dark brown. It's like they're paired together, like two spots. I know it's hard to see, but if you look at it real carefully, the others will not have that either. So these are all unique things that should help you identify this. Okay, this
memory device.
Pardon?
Memory device in this one. It doesn't have the windows. Can't see through. I see less.
Yeah.
So it's erroneous. I see less. Can't see through those windows. And because the windows are closed,
Yeah.
they're dreaming. It's sleeping. So
Sounds good. I like it.
I see less. No windows.
Good. I like that. Very good. Notice the size, about 1/8 inches. So these are relatively small, also, and they're dark color. But these are very common. You will find these. This one was taken in Derby Canyon, as you can see, in Chelan County. But they're widespread. It's a relatively common spread-wing skipper. So you can see it eastern and western Washington. Okay, the ventral surface. Notice once again. See the dark and light. Now this is just another characteristic to keep in mind. This will help you with this dusky wing because the others will not have that. Okay, so now we get it a little harder. Oops, did I skip one? Yeah, Propertius dusky wing. The Propertius, oh wow, you can see that full wide open there. Side. Now look at the translucent spots. 4 of them. Okay, Dreamy didn't have that. So that's one thing to look for. Also look at the size. This is our largest dusky wing. 1 3/4. It almost is the size of the silver spot skipper. It's probably our largest. It's the largest of this genus, at least in our area. Another thing is normally it usually has this two-tone color. I don't know if this is really the best characteristic to use. But usually the hind wing is a totally different color than the forewing. As you can see, different shades of brown. This is very characteristic of Propertius. Also, another thing about Propertius is the fact that it's always around oak. So, yes?
I think the females are a lot more two-tone.
Yeah, they are, actually. Yeah, you're right, the females are in charge. Oh, by the way, I'm not showing females tonight because of time. I don't have time to do that. If I really did this thoroughly, I'd show you the females of each one of these, which I had photos of. Oh, and by the way, all the photos you're going to see tonight, plus more information, is in my book. So if any of you are interested, see me afterwards. But anyway, you're right about the females, that it's even more pronounced.
What's protruding kind of in between the antenna? It looks kind of two furry little things with little black...
Palps.
What?
Palps. You know, they have mouth parts. They have different kinds of mouth parts, and insects have, you know, a variety of mouth parts, and 2 of them are called palps.
How do you spell
They
it?
pedipalp, P-A-L-P-S.
Okay. For like palpate?
Yeah,
Okay.
kind of like, yeah.
Is this the Fury Oak one?
Yeah, this is associated with oaks. This, you know, when I lived in Spanaway in the 70s, this was very common throughout all of Fort Lewis and McCord. Where all the oaks were. All I had to do was find where there's an oak grove, and I would find Propertius. It was everywhere. And now, yeah, I understand it's quite rare. In fact, I've done some surveys down in Fort Lewis, and I have yet to see one down there. And I spent quite a bit of time, 3 different summers, doing surveys, and I haven't seen any, even in some nice oak, prime oak areas. I'm sure there's probably some there, but it's a mystery of what's happening to the prairies down there. A lot of the butterflies are really diminishing in numbers, and I don't know if anybody really has a handle on why. There's probably a lot of reasons, or a lot of at least ideas, theories about it. But anyway, this used to be very common. But you can find it in western Washington. Are they still hiding out in Tahuya in that oak area? Have you seen them out there?
I have not seen them in the last 6-7 years.
But I know before she's seen them out there. We've seen them in the Bald Hills. They're very common in eastern Washington, and like Oak Creek, all the oak trees in Oak Creek, they're very common right along there. And so it's a larger size one. It's got the translucent spots. Also, you notice it doesn't have those that chain, if you notice here, you don't have that chain of spots coming down here. So these are all going to help you, at least it helps you from the Dreamy. It may not help you from the others, but it'll help you from that one. Anyway, and take a look at here. It's pretty well washed out in the ventral hind wing. The spots have pretty well disappeared. You might, see at least faint markings, but it's basically very poorly defined, I would say, in this case. So this is the Propertius. Do you feel comfortable with this one so far?
No.
No. You're probably not going to be real comfortable with any of the skippers, but let's move on. The next two are really a problem. The Vesuvius dusky wing is one, I think David and I, where are you, David? You're somewhere around here. We saw something at doing the butterfly survey last June. It was into June, wasn't it? We were up there and we saw this. The Vesuvius dusky wing has the translucent spots. So you're going to say, uh-oh, how come this is not a Propertius? Okay. Well, notice here that you have a real mixing of different kinds of scaling. You don't have any kind of a band here. Now that might be really picky, but it can be useful to see how this is all, there doesn't any really a band formation. It's almost like it's checkered. Okay? And, but the best help for you for the Vesuvius is its location and time. Now I know that's a cop-out, but you can do the male genitalia if you'd rather. But this is the latest flying one. If you're out in June, even late June, and you see a dusky wing, and if you're anywhere around Ceanothus, mountain balm, the shrub, and if it's nectaring on Ceanothus, you can bet Las Vegas-wise that this is going to be Vesuvius, because it hangs around its host plant, which is the Ceanothus, and it's a later flyer. Okay, so this should help. Now, there's something else that will help, but you're going to have to catch it to do this, and you're going to have to pick it up with your forceps, and you're going to have to examine the hind leg. The hind leg, if you follow it all the way back to the base, there are no bristles. It's basically bare. Okay? And so this is one way that you can tell it apart, other than using the genitalia. But you have to catch it to do that. And a lot of people are reluctant to want to do that. Well, let's take a look at the next one that's confused with the Perseus. The Perseus, you look at it and you say, well, that looks different. It looks much darker. Well, it usually is, but this is a fresh specimen. You can't always go by color. As butterflies age, a lot of times they lighten. But it is normally darker. And you have your translucent spots again. And it looks pretty much like the Vesuvius. You have this mixture again, and you can say, well, how am I going to tell these apart? Very difficult. Very difficult, except for one thing. You're likely not, this will be not hanging around Ceanothus. If you're anywhere else, if there's no Ceanothus around, and you see this butterfly and you think, ooh, might be Vesuvius, it's probably the Perseus. The Perseus is much more common. It's much more abundant in Washington than the Vesuvius. Vesuvius is very specialized, kind of in the eastern Cascades, where you have the Ceanothus. So this may help. Also, can you see the tufts of hair? The hind legs are really fuzzy. And so if you take a look at the hind legs of these things, they're really, really fuzzy. And so that is a really good way for field identification. Once again, you gotta catch it to do that.
Is it smaller than Vesuvius?
Nope, about the same size, and they basically look pretty much the same. I would say these are, in fact, David, when you and I saw those, we weren't really sure what they were for sure, except the fact that they're right next to Ceanothus, and because of the time of the year, so we concluded they're Vesuvius. But we couldn't be 100% sure, looking at those, that they were.
I actually ended up looking at the specimen as a male that had completely bare.
You did. So it was identifiable as Vesuvius. Good for you. Great. That will do it. Okay. Excellent. That's what we guessed. Now, we've got another tropical genus, Pergus. and which has there's a lot of different checkered skippers in the neotropics. We have 3. This one I don't think you even have to worry about because you're never going to see it. This is probably I think it's the rarest butterfly in Washington.
Easy to tell.
I have gone 3 times to try to find this butterfly, and I have never found it. Now, David, were you successful finding it and raising the larva from this?
I did, David Gaines got it, he got one up at Slate Peak, got a female.
Oh, you did get one at Slate Peak. Good. They are in the high. They are in that area, and well, the high Okanagan. They're very high mountain species. Basically, where most of the records have been in Horseshoe Mountain, and that's of course where I went from. I went 3 different times and struck out 3 times. I didn't find any of them up there. I looked, I knew exactly where to look. I knew the meadows they were supposed to be in. They weren't there. This is extremely rare. You notice where this comes from. A good friend of mine in Colorado sent me this specimen. So this is kind of cheating a little bit, but this is, I could not find, I do not have this from Washington State. But anyway, how do we know this one? If you ever run into it. Oh, by the way, anywhere you're going to find it, you're going to be really close to Canada. It's going to be right at the very northern part of our state, and very high elevation. Like Slate Peak, 7,000 feet. Horseshoe Mountain is pretty close to that. There's going to be very high elevation meadows. Okay, and near Canada. All right, anyway, this has the checkers, the little square checkers. And so it is a type of checkered skipper. And also, which might help, is that it's not as black as the next one that you could confuse it with, okay? Which is our 2-banded checkered skipper. This is more kind of a gray. It's because of the scaling that you have with white and brown scales on it, which has a tendency to lighten it. You look at the ventral surface and it's very white. Yes?
Is the August 28th a good indicator too that they fly really late?
I'm sorry, but...
August 28th, is that
Oh, August 28th.
time?
This is when this specimen was collected. August 28th. And this is about when you're supposed to look for. You're supposed to look for anywhere from the flight period is supposed to be the very end of July through August.
Okay.
But like I said, I have not found it in the field, so I cannot verify that. This was from Colorado. So, but I imagine it would be very similar because it's the same habitat. High mountains, both places. Okay, underneath you can see that it's a much white scaling. The spots are really irregular, but a lot of white scaling in this thing. Now, this is the Purgus.
What's up with these antennae? They look kind of butterfly-like instead of...
Yeah, they're really not. They're not rounded at all. Those are club shaped. Those are called club. Those are kind of club. And the head is definitely skipper-like.
Yeah. The antennae.
Yeah, you're going to see some variations in the skipper antennae that sometimes you're going to almost wonder.
That's a little misleading too. They're scooped out. They're kind of hollow on one side.
Yeah, that's right. That's true. Yeah. So, and from this angle, they may not look like you want them to look either.
Oh, I'm with you. Okay.
Yeah. So now this one is a very common. Oh, this is very common skipper. If you're out and you find a checkered skipper, this is what you're going to see. It's common in eastern Western Washington, wetter areas, meadows, foothills. It's all around Puget Sound, and it's found pretty much all over eastern Washington, the mountains where you have wet meadows. This is where this is going to be. Now, once again, it has the square spots. So it's going to look like the grizzled skipper, but it's much darker. You see how it looks almost black. And the scaling is much darker on this, and this is so abundant. So I would say that if you see anything that looks like the two, call it this one. Because I don't think you're going to find the grizzle. If you do, you're a heck of a lot better at it than I am. And I've spent 35 years looking for butterflies.
And it's May 1st.
Fur or hair or something?
No, we really call them bristles. They're not really true hair. It's not like mammal's hair. They're really bristles is what they are. Protein extensions. And yes, there's butterflies, a lot of butterflies have a lot of that on them. And it really does look like hair, doesn't it? True hair, but it's not.
So they're not called scales, they're only called bristles.
Well, they're modified scales. in other words, genetically, they have come from scales. Okay, so they are related to scales, but they themselves are called the bristles because they're not scale-like at this point. Underneath, it's a little darker than the grizzled skipper, but anyway, we don't need to spend a lot of time on it because the grizzled skipper is one that you probably won't see here, so we don't really need to worry about it. Now, the next purgus is common also, but in a different habitat. The two-banded kind of likes wet areas, meadows, so forth, in the mountains and valleys. This one is more of a dry area. You're going to find this more where it's sagebrushy, that type of environment more. And this is the common checkered skipper. This particular one was collected in Hesperiidae. It's very common around Sun Lakes. It's common in Joaquin Canyon and Yakima Canyon and all these eastern Washington canyons. It's relatively common. But the thing is, it'll help you identify this right off, you can see, is these spots. These spots are rectangular, they're not square. And they're so large that they make the whole butterfly appear white. Okay, so is that, I'll go back real quickly. Because the two you're going to confuse. This one, you see the spots are square, small, and these are elongated. And it's much whiter on the ventral surface. Okay, so that's our purgus species. Two of them you will probably see on field trips with our association. The third one, the grizzled, highly doubt. My favorite skipper is the northern white skipper. And there's a male and then there's a mating pair. And I will show you the female, this one, because it shows sexual dimorphism. Most of the skippers, the female is only different because it might be a hair larger or it has some more brown scaling on it. But most of the females look fairly similar to the males. I mean, there are some differences, but they look fairly similar. This one is, the female is very different, so I have this one. But this is a gorgeous, this is absolutely gorgeous skipper. Another tropical genus. We only have one species here, the northern white. And so I don't know if we can mistake this one. This is going to be around mallows, shrub mallows. So it's going to be, the habitat's going to be determined by if you have shrub mallows around. So usually wet areas or areas by streams where mallows grow. This is where you might see it. This one was at our famous boneyard. That's a funny story. And it's also a sad story too. 0.2 miles south of Rocky Reach Dam, there was a one canyon that was just filled with these mallows. And John Pelham was the one who told us about it. He says, "Oh, you got to go there. It's quicker. You don't have to go all the way to Hesperiidae or Sun Lake. You can just go there." And I said, "Well, tell me about it." He says, "Well, we call it the boneyard." Well, as you park your car and you get off, there was a dead mammal of some kind. I don't know whether it was an elk or deer or whether it's a cow or a horse. But anyway, all the bones are scattered. And I said, "Well, this must be the place. I see a lot of bones." And we went in there, and they were abundant in there. They were just abundant in there. And so David wanted to go see this. He said, that was the latest part of June. I said, maybe we could still see something. So let's go up. So we did. We parked, we went down there, and we were extremely disappointed. What has happened is a fire had swept through that entire valley, and it had destroyed every mallow. There was nothing. There was no mallow growing.
Do you see the males again?
Pardon?
Do I see the male again?
Oh, this is the male.
This is the male. Oh,
Yeah,
that's
and this is the male. And so I was just upset because it was the best population of the northern white skipper that I knew of. And I was trying to show David this place, and unless those mallows grow back and they reestablish themselves. But close by, they're in Joaquin Canyon. I've seen them there, so I know that it isn't going to be the end of the population, but hopefully things will come back in that canyon and see it. But it's just a beautiful, beautiful skipper. And this is the underside. You can see that you have that white kind of a central band with the tan coloring. This is the female. You see, the female is totally different. Beautiful, just very beautiful. Much darker scaling, and so the white has given way to brown scaling. And so I wanted to show this because this really does show quite a difference in the the different genders of this. And and you got your crescents. You can see the crescents here on both the male and the female. Okay, this one is that's not going to be a hard one to identify. Okay, the common sooty wing. This was collected at Sadis Pass, in the Yakima side of the pass, and the Yakima Indian Reservation. But if you want to find this, if you want to see this butterfly, go down anywhere around orchards. Because its food plant is a lot of these weeds that are just running around the apple orchards, cherry orchards and all. Goosefoot, I think, is one of them, David, is it, that it feeds on. And these little weeds are what it thrives on. And so I think I've seen more of these just walking around the edges of orchards than I have anywhere else in Eastern Washington. But I did see one up in Quincy one time, and I've seen them in other various places, but around the orchards is where you'll see them.
Goosefoot, the Chenopodium, is one of the hosts?
Yes, one of the food plants. Yeah, there's several others too, I believe, and David will enlighten you at the end. And that's the ventral surface. Notice it's almost all immaculate. You just have those spots. Once again, the characteristic is it's a brown, basically, with your 5 spots, white spots right here. This is relatively small too. Notice 1 inch. So we're talking about a pretty small little black butterfly. Okay. Now, let's get on to the grass skippers. Grass skippers, well, as David told you, they feed on monocots, that is, grasses, and of a variety of grasses. And the males display a stigma now, not a costal fold, but a stigma, and with black scales, so it's pretty easy to see. No costal folds in the males, and at rest, the forewings can either be up over the body vertically, or they can be separated, as David showed you. The forewings at a 45-degree angle, and the hind wings lay flat. Okay, our first one is not, like as David said, is really its own group. The Arctic skipper is basically separated from the other 2 groups of skippers. But I'm including them with the grass skippers here, just for convenience sake, basically. This skipper is found in Europe. And in Europe, it's called the checkered skipper. So it's the same species that you can find in Europe. So this is basically a northern climb skipper. This is not one that has really a tropical heritage to it, at least recently. This one's be easy for you to identify. I don't think you have any problem with this one. It has the orange spots on it, brown with the orange spots. And this one was collected, this is the colony I discovered. I don't think there were any records in Pierce County until I ran into this at the Lincoln Tree Farm in Spanaway. Along the trails, the kind of the wetter trails in the grassy areas, I found it. And this population was pretty consistent. It was there year after year. I haven't been back to see if it is there now, but it was there. But this is found in many, many places throughout the state, but it's not always common. You have to get in the right habitat. It kind of prefers wet areas. And so you're going to find it where you have kind of like roadside ditches, or you have like marshy areas in meadows, in mountain meadows. I've seen it in Pend Oreille County. I've seen it up in Okanagan County. I've seen it in Pierce County. And so it's widespread, but it's not extremely common. Okay? Are we okay? This one is pretty easy to identify, I think. I don't think you should have any trouble with this one. The ventral surface. Now, we have 2 skipperlings that fly in the state. 2 skipperlings. There it shows you, once again, the 45-degree angle forewings and the flat hind wings. This is the Hesperiidae. This is not going to find it down in Yakima or Kittitas County. This is going to have to go up into the Okanagan and eastward for this. It's an immaculate brown butterfly. It's got a very thin brown border, but it's a very immaculate brown. There's really no markings other than that. This one was collected at Mount Hull, on the flanks of Mount Hull, which is in Okanagan County, right near Oroville. And it's very abundant there. You get into the grassy areas there, and it's very, very common there. It's a great place to see it if you want. In fact, that whole area up there, if any of you are up near Oroville, do go up to Mount Hull. There's many, many different species of butterflies up there. It's a wonderful butterfly area. It's just wonderful. Pardon?
What was the name?
Mount Hull. It's right out of Oroville.
Oh,
Okay, so it's pretty far north, and it's a long ways to drive, but you get a nice summer day, you'll be rewarded with a number of species. It's really quite a rich butterfly area. And this one is there. The ventral, the ventral surface also is immaculate, no markings on it. So you can see that it's pretty much just all one color, except for this interesting two-tone hind wing that it has, and a thin white margin that you see. That's basically all the markings on this thing. And so once again, this skipperling was collected in June. June is a good time to go up there. That's a great time to be up at Mount Hull, is June. Now, the European skipperling. David told you a little bit about this. This was, I believe, discovered by Bob Pyle in 2002 in Blaine. And he sent out a memo to all of us and said, hey, there's a new butterfly in the state. And boy, I got in my car, I think, the next day. And I was up to Blaine to find this. And sure enough, I ran into it. But it's a funny story associated with this. It feeds on Timothy grass, so I knew I had to find a hayfield. And so I found this beautiful hayfield up in Blaine. And I was driving along the street, but there's a house in front. And I said, I don't think I'm going to dare just walk into their hayfield. So I went up and knocked on the door. And I had my butterfly net. And this guy comes to the door and looks at me. And I said, do you mind if I walk through your hayfield but for butterflies? You should have seen his look. This guy is nuts. Send him to Western State Hospital right now. And so I had to explain to him the situation. And he listened, but he still, I could tell, he was not really thinking that I was telling him. Didn't even know what I was going to do in his field. But so he watched me. I could see he's in the window in the kitchen. And he watched me go out in the field. And I was out there working. And sure enough, they were just abundant out there. These things were just flying everywhere. By the way, in Europe, this is called the Essex skipper. So it's the same species. It came somehow to BC. That's where it started. I don't know if you know the history about it or not, Dave. I don't. But it came into British Columbia, and it's been working its way south for years.
Started on the east coast of Canada.
Oh, it did, and then it worked across to BC,
Yeah.
and then down. Okay, that's how it went. But anyway, now it's in our state, and I don't see any reason why it's not going to be all the way down to King County. As long as it's, you follow where hayfields are. Any farmer growing Timothy grass, it should be one of these years, we're going to see it down here in King County. It's in Whatcom County now, and you know any further how far it's gotten?
Reed-berry grass. That's a really common introduced weed, huge tall grass.
Oh yeah?
They use it like crazy.
Oh good, good. So that will bring them down. There should be no barriers in all I'm
No
saying. They're just going to be just flying down here, and we might even see them down here in Seattle. Who knows?
We haven't gotten it south of Whatcom County yet.
Okay, but yeah, I think it's just a matter of time. They're going to be working their way south with this. But anyway, this is the European skipperling, the Essex skipper in Europe. And notice it's got a kind of a hind-brown color to it. And look at the little tiny stigma. I think these are kind of, a little tiny stigma is just a little tiny thing there. It's kind of different. And if you look at the ventral surface, it's immaculate again. So the skipperlings don't have a lot of markings on them. And I put Whatcom County question mark because who knows where it's going to end up. But so far, it's in Whatcom County. Blaine, if you want to see it, knock on doors at farmers' doors in late August with your butterfly net. And I hope you don't get shot. But you can maybe have some luck seeing this in the fields. They're really abundant. They're really common once you get in the field. Oh, now we're getting into a good group, Hesperiidae. Oh, a fun group of skippers. These are grass skippers. One thing in general, the genus Hesperiidae will help you is that their ventral hind wing is marked in either silver or white spots. Normally. Okay? So generally, if you see a skipper in eastern Washington and it has these white, silver spots in it, it's going to be probably in this genus. Hesperiidae. Now, this one is the most common member of the group. Okay? And this is Hesperiidae juba. This is found, in fact, it's double brooded. You can get it in the spring, you can get it in the fall or late summer. How I can recognize it usually very quickly is it's green. It's got green bristles on it. I don't know how well you can see that, but if you see it if you're with your binoculars and don't see it, you'll see this back is all green. This helps. a lot in identifying this, plus those nice silver spots that it has. And it's very abundant, and it loves the drier kind of canyons, Joaquin Canyon, Oak Creek, all these canyons in eastern Washington. It's really abundant.
Those silver spots move down the vein a little bit.
Yeah,
on
yeah,
the
I'll
Hesperiidae.
show the ventral in this, and then we'll take a look at that characteristic again. This was collected in Yakima Canyon, Yakima County in July. But like I say, it's double brooded. You can find them in kind of the spring and also in the summer. And now, one way to tell this skipper that is very helpful is this wavy. You see this margin here of the brown coming in. Now, all through the Hesperiidae, you're going to see really variations of this. Some of the brown is going to encroach way in, and some of it is going to be barely on there, and some of it's going to be basically an interface that is basically just kind of smudged together. But this one shows this wavy pattern. Now, this is very characteristic of the Juba, and also its abundance. I don't know if any of you went to the conference last year, but when we went on our field trips out, where all the mining holes, I think practically every skipper we saw was a Juba, wasn't it? That was just real common. It was practically every water hole we saw Juba skippers, and that was in July. So it's a really abundant. Now, let's look at this again. The ventral surface, you can see the scales. They're kind of loosely connected together, but somewhat by the veins. But the silver spots on it, once again, shows that it's Hesperiidae. And so that should help us at least get into the right genus of what skipper we're working with here. Okay, now this is a common branded skipper. Now the common branded skipper has two subspecies, and I'll show them to you briefly. This is a high mountain. This is a very high mountain butterfly. High Okanagan, Sawtooth Mountains, this one, Manitoba, you can see where it was collected in the Sawtooths, which is above Lake Chelan. But this one is, like I say, high elevation. Now, you can see the brown now is not there. It looks like it's pretty definite here, but when you start getting down here, it gets really fuzzy. So we've kind of lost that Juba characteristic. See here, it's not really that wavy. It's somewhat, but not really. Also, look how the brown is encroached in on it. The orange is much reduced in this, so which makes this different. And this is very high elevation. Okay, so this one is in the, like I said, the Sawtooth Mountains in High Okanagan. This subspecies. There's the ventral surface. The scales are more white than they are silver. But once again, showing you as Hesperiidae, and they're kind of loosely connected together too, much like the Juba. But you can tell, once again, where they're located. You're not going to find the Juba where this is. This is really a high mountain butterfly. Now, the second subspecies is Hesperiidae. This flies in the Olympics. And very common at Hurricane Ridge, very common up at Mount Townsend where this was collected. And this was collected in August. It flies August into September. And it's very similar to the last one. I mean, if you look at it, you say, well, what's the difference? Well, there's not a lot of difference in the two. Very difficult to tell them apart. They have the same characteristics. Yeah, and that's the trouble with subspecies. Sometimes people say, I don't know if we need subspecies. Let's just put them together. This is one case where you can question that except for where they're located. One of them is way up in the Okanagan, northeastern Washington, and this one is way up in the Olympics. They're totally isolated from one another. And so I think in that respect, at least we loosely call it its own subspecies since it's kind of a unique habitat. Once again, high mountain. Okay? This is the ventral surface, very similar to the other one, to Manitoba. So, but notice the color of this is almost yellow now. This is almost like the Pleiades. So we see we have some variation in the Hesperiidae that can be confusing. Okay, the western branded skipper. Now this is the Hesperiidae colorata. This one now is lowered. Now this one, the western branded, is not high elevation. This is really basically low, where it's warmer, drier. This you'll see where we get it, Bear Canyon, okay, in Yakima. But you can find it many, many places in eastern Washington, kind of the eastern side of the Cascades and canyons, where it's relatively drier. So this is a lower flying butterfly. Notice all the orange has really got a tremendous amount of orange. The brown is really reduced in the western branded skipper. This subspecies is called Idaho, and this one flies in eastern Washington. You look at the ventral surface of it, look at how this is very pale, almost yellow-brown here, but you still have these white spots. And notice Hesperiidae is pretty consistent with those spots. They kind of look pretty much alike. And that's kind of a genus characteristic. Now, the other subspecies is Oregonia. This is a very rare one, and this is found in Puget Sound. This subspecies, I found it most commonly down in Mima Mountains. Labor Day weekend is a good time to see this when you're walking around the Mima Mountains. And it flies with one other skipper, which is the common woodland skipper. But there's a big difference. This is so much bigger. This is like twice the size. So you can't miss it if you're looking around and say, whoa, that skipper is pretty good size. Then you see a little tiny dinky skipper. That's the woodland skipper, which will be way more common, but this one is easy to pick out down in that area. This was collected in Tenino, right next to Wolfhaven. Right, in fact, on the railroad tracks, right next to Wolfhaven. This was collected down there. But in that area is where they thrive. Down the lower Puget Sound area is where you're going to find Oregonia. It's a very late flying butterfly. Notice August 29th. I would look for it there, and in September. You know, it's a good time to find that. Yeah, there's records from the San Juans, and all the way down through the Puget Trough. But it's not common. This is not a common butterfly at all. Okay, ventral surface of it. Notice here, once again, we getting away from this Hesperia white silver. This is almost like a Polites, but it's got enough other characteristics that we keep it with the Hesperia. It shows you some variation. Nevada skipper, another rare one. It's not found everywhere. This one was collected at Wenatchee Pass. I have seen it along the Snake River, down the Lower Granite Dam, but I've never seen it common. This butterfly has a more rounded, I'm just trying to help you as best I can with this, because this is a tough one. It has more of a rounded hind wing, and the best, I think, characteristic is looking at the ventral hind wing. You notice how much bigger the spots are relative to the wing. I mean, every time I see this butterfly, all I see is, whoa, those spots. They kind of just dart out at you because of the fact that they're so big compared to the size of the wing. Now, this will help, but it's not a very common skipper. This is one you don't run into really very often. This was collected in May, and I think that's the only time I've ever seen it is in May. I saw it in Lower Canyon, Granite Dam in May as well. Okay, Nevada skipper. Now, an easy one. Sachem. Finally, we eat you. Got through the Hesperia. Got the Polites to do next. Okay, but anyway, look at that thing. It's got a stigma, but the stigma has all this black scaling all the way around it, plus lavender scaling. It's got great big eye spots on it. Can't miss it. Also, it flies in the Tri-Cities. Makes it easy. Go down to Kennewick, go down that area, Richland, you'll see this butterfly. I got this right at the campground at the park there, Columbia Park. It was all over the place, all over the campground, just everywhere you go. It's just sitting there. Campers would look at me like I was weird, but other than that, there was no problem. 1 1/4 inch, and there's several broods, but they're pretty much, David, have they spread much from the Tri-Cities? They're pretty much focused there. Have they really moved? I know that they're on the move.
They've been seen north of Yakima.
They have. So they have moved a little bit west into the Yakima, probably Sunnyside area, in that area. Okay, so they are migrating. They're going to become more common. They are on the move, just like the European skipper. Very similar. Okay, so you can identify this one. This is easy. Okay, the backside is immaculate, so that's not going to help you at all. But the top surface, you can see those spots. So you're going to get that.
Less than 2?
Pardon?
The female has the spots too.
Unfortunately, no.
Then how do you identify the female?
Did you want another night here?
Yeah.
I would say because they fly together, you're going to find a lot of the females are considered indistinguishable. Did you run into that too, David? Some females of some species are saying you cannot tell the difference between them.
This has really yellow spots on the ventral side.
The male.
Whoa.
Well, the female does have yellow. Yeah, it does have yellow. And but there's some females that, like I said, some species that are really, really difficult. But yeah, they do. I'm sorry, they do have the yellow. So, but you can tell that. That's really, really simple to see here. And also, look at this characteristic here. Look at this big lavender eye here, underneath the stigma. That will help you too, but I don't think you need that. All you need to identify a peck skipper is this ventral surface. Now this is once again a northern butterfly. Okanagan County, this was, let's see, this particular one was collected in Mount Hull again. In June. See, it's a great place to go. Great place if you want to go butterfly. I go up into Mount Hull. And but this one was in June, but it's along the Okanagan eastward. But once again, it's a northeastern butterfly. Okay, the sandhill skipper. Now I want you to dwell on this spider web in this particular one because the ventral surface of the other one is washed out. But this one shows you, I always call this the spider web. That's how I recognize it, the spider web. Here's the sandhill. It's also got a little lavender here, but it's much more reduced. It's got a very wavy hind wing margin that you can see. Several brooded. This one was also collected at Columbia Park in Kennewick, in the Tri-Cities. But it's very common up in Sun Lakes. Very, very abundant butterfly. It's a very late butterfly. Once again, look at here, August 31st. It flies into September. But it has several broods. You can get it earlier in the year too if you look for it. So it's a common butterfly where you find it. And in fact, it's a very common grass butterfly. I've heard people say that they see it in their yard in Yakima. They're in the grass. I mean, they just go out in the front lawn and it's right there. So this is one that if you live in Yakima, you just go outside and find it. There's the ventral surface, but you can see the spider webby appearance is not as good on this. It's more washed out, but you can see how it's kind of really checkered. But that's unique for the sandhill, so you can tell that. That'll help you with that. The Mardon, well, here's another rarity. Okay, you're going to have to go specifically to look for this because you're not going to run into it many places. The best site is the one being very protected by the Conservancy, which is the Scatter Creek. And this one was not collected there, however. This was collected, believe it or not, in the hunting Scatter Creek area before. That's when it was more common. This butterfly used to be common all over the prairies, Puget Prairie. This was right, about 2 blocks from my house, I would find it in McCord Air Force Base. The Mardon was everywhere. It was everywhere in the prairies. But now it's very restricted. There's only a few places on Fort Lewis that it's been located, and the best area is the Scatter Creek area that's been working really hard to keep that habitat for it. But this is the Mardon. Now the Mardon has a lot of brown on it. In fact, if any of you want to see this down at Scatter Creek, since it is such a unique eastern Washington over by Mount Adams. There's some meadows up in there. I don't know exactly where they are. I have not been there, and maybe you have, but there's a population of them in there as well.
They've been finding a bunch of colonies up by Rimrock Lake.
Oh, they have Rimrock now? So in other words, maybe with more sampling, this butterfly will not be so rare. It's going to be more common. And that's the truth of all butterflies, I think. The more we sample, the more we're going to find out things that we didn't know. So anyway, this is the Mardon. If you take a look at the ventral surface, it's pretty well washed out. It doesn't seem to have really a lot of spots. You can see some faint spots here, but other than that, it's not. So this is the Mardon. It's a May-flying skipper, and if you want to find it, go down to Scatter Creek. That's the best place to see it. The tawny edge skipper, this is a northeastern species again. Now we're back up the Okanagan and eastwards, and it's very brilliant orange along the sill area here, and it's got a kind of interesting stigma as well. And thick, very thick brown margin, and now this is in the Pleiades group. And the Pleiades group now will not have silver and white spots on the ventral surface. So that's how we'll be able to tell these from the Hesperiidae genus. This was collected at Mount Hull. We're getting kind of a broken record here. You see what a good place that is. That's a great one. Here's the ventral surface, pretty well washed out. It's not going to be able to determine much from the ventral surface of this. It's going to be the dorsal surface that you're going to look for, the tawny edge. I found this also in Moses Meadows, if any of you are familiar with Moses Meadows, but I didn't find it out in the meadows. Where I found it was in the logging roads. Alongside the logging roads is where I would see it. It would land actually on the roads. And so it was relatively common in Moses Meadows. But this is a northeastern butterfly we're talking about here. And the long dash skipper. This one also is one that has evaded me. I've gone up to Tiger Meadows several times to find it, which is supposed to be common, and never found it. The long dash, I suppose, comes from, this is my guess, the stigma and then all this big brown area that extends it out to make it long dash. But this is Pleiades mystic. It is a northeastern butterfly, but it's not really common, at least for me. I have not seen it. And this one, once again, comes from my good friend in Colorado. And so then I have a specimen to show you. The brown patches extend from the stigma that makes that that long dash that we see. The ventral surface, pretty immaculate, not much distinction there of colors. So once again, Pend Oreille County, good place to look for this. The Sonora skipper, we have two subspecies of this. We have Sonora cyrus and Sonora sonora. Sonora cyrus we'll cover first. This one is more in the lowlands of western Washington, the Puget Trough area. This is a June butterfly now, and so the Mardon is May. The Sonora is June. So if you're in western Washington looking for skippers, you can almost go by month. You see it, okay, Mardon May, Sonora June. When you get into August, September, you get the woodland skipper. And so they're pretty well separated. So they're relatively easy to just go by time in western Washington. This was collected at Rainier, right on the Deschutes River, down in Thurston County. And it was in a meadow there. The orange area is reduced. There's an eye that surrounds the entire stigma. It's an elongated eye. This might be helpful. I think the most helpful thing is the time. If you see a skipper in the fields, in the lower Puget Trough in June, it's going to probably be the Sonora. That's just what it's going to be. Because we know how rare the Mardon is. And our other skippers don't really show up until late summer. So that should be enough to help you with this one. You've got some spotting here. Notice the Pleiades all have kind of like yellowish, tannish spots. They don't have the white silver that the Hesperiidae had. So this is another way you can tell them apart. Now, this is the Sonora sonora, the subspecies that you find in the mountains. Cascades is where you're going to find this one. This one was collected up in the Sawtooth again, Chelan County, at the end of July. This one looks very similar to the other one. So they're pretty much the same. You have the extensive orange area. You've got your scaling around the stigma. But these are going to be in the Cascades and July and August. But when we get to the woodland skippers, that's the only one you can confuse it with. You'll be able to tell the woodland skippers from this quite easily. So I don't think it'll be a problem. One thing that might help you with the Sonora that I found is this characteristic. You see this elongated spot here? This elongated spot is not found in the other skippers. Right there. This may help. Let's go back and I'll show you the other one real quickly. Same thing here. See the other subspecies? So this could be a really important characteristic to use for the sonora. If you need a definite characteristic. Okay, woodland skippers. Okay, the woodland skipper, this is our most common skipper. You all know the woodland skipper, this is the one that's in your yard. You go outside in August and he's all over the place. In September, this is our most common butterfly, by far. And he's all over the whole state. You can find him everywhere. Very, very common, but a late summer butterfly. So once again, when I always see him, I always thought, oh, I gotta get back. So I was a school teacher. I said, oh, I guess it's time to get ready for school. Because by the time he starts appearing in my yard, it's school time. It's approaching September. So this is, this one was taken in Joaquin Canyon. And the ventral surface of the woodland skipper has these spots. Sometimes they're clearer than this, but a lot of times they're washed out. But be looking for those spots right in there, which might help you with this. But other than that, it's pretty immaculate. Now this is the subspecies Selvinoides. Now this is one subspecies situation. I do believe it. Even though it's found statewide, we have 3 distinct populations of this. Let me show you the next one. This will blow you away. Now that's the woodland skipper from our coast. The same butterfly. If you go down to Raymond, that's where I had more fun doing this. I started out, it was a beautiful day, and this was in September, and I decided to go from Gig Harbor all the way to Raymond, and I stopped along the way to sample the woodland skipper all the way down to Raymond. And even though this one is very distinct, you find gradations of the two as you go along. It's very interesting. And so it's kind of fun to do that. I would see kind of a mixing of it. But when you get all the way to the coast, they're this way. And when you get all the way to Gig Harbor, they're like the one that was in Joaquin Canyon. So they're distinct, but yet they integrate together. Once again, showing it's a subspecies, not a species. Okay, so this is our Oracosta, our coastal woodland skipper. Okay, and look at the other side. The other one was all washed out, one color. Look at this one. It's got all this dark scaling in it. So, I mean, this kind of blows you away. So this is our common, skipper that we have around our yard. Only this is what it looks like on the coast. Now, let's go to the next one. This is the Columbia Basin. Let's get to the dry area of the state. What's it look like there? This was up at Sun Lakes. Look at it. It's almost all orange. Same skipper. It's almost entirely orange. Very bright. And this one is called Montebello. This subspecies. Look at the ventral surface. Isn't that blow you away? It's yellow. The whole thing is yellow, almost white. And so that is kind of neat. So this is one that I really highly believe in as a subspecies. Is this because they are so different. Look at the difference in those ventral. Look at this one compared to that one, compared to that one. And they're all the same butterfly, same species. Amazing. So that's kind of fun. Okay, Yuma skipper. The Yuma skipper, we're not out of time here. Oh, just yeah.
Question, on that last, we saw comparison before, you said they're all the same species. If you do the genitalia bit, is that what you see?
Yeah, they would be. Now, I have not actually dissected the genitalia of these, but from what I understand, that they are identical.
Okay, thanks.
This morphological difference could really be climate. Temperature and the humidity and amount of rainfall can have some bearing on how these insects are going to come. This is a very dry area. You're in a very arid area where this is, and obviously in Raymond they get a little bit of rain, and so this could have it could be a kind of a climatic factor
Isn't it,
which causes this.
isn't it, and with birds, it's the creatures closer to the ocean, the west, are much darker.
Well,
Even
I don't know if
birds-
that's true of everything, but in this case, I would say that's
Isn't
true.
that dark lighting for a lot of the birds?
Yeah, are the birds the same
They
way?
are darker, and there's a
Okay,
name.
that's an interesting theory.
That's guiding lighting, so
Yeah,
I think I
yeah.
learned that in some class somewhere.
Okay, that's a very interesting theory, but it is true here. Okay, we're almost done. We've got very few to go, so you bear with me just a few more minutes. This is the Yuma. This is another rare one, a beautiful skipper. Look at how bright orange it is. This, as Dave told you, is associated very strongly with its food plant, which is the giant reed, Pragmates. And this colony that I studied was over in Sun Lakes, and I think that's where you probably did your work too. It's really immaculate. Look at it, immaculate orange. It's just really a beautiful, and it's quite a large skipper. Look at here, it gets up to 1.5 inches. So it's a pretty good sized one. But July is a good time to see it, and where I found it common was right by the campground at Sun Lake State Park. So if you're camping right there, you walk about 15 feet, and there's kind of a pond there with all this reed. They're right in there. You don't have to go far. They're almost flying to your tent. Now there is the ventral surface of this, which is very immaculate, kind of a yellow-orange color. So this is the Yuma. Now we have two brown skippers, and this finishes out the talk tonight. The dun skipper. The dun skipper is really pretty well associated with wetlands. This one was collected on Highway 10 between Cleveland and Ellensburg. There's the highway there goes there. There's all kinds of wet areas along that road. And if you pull off any of those, there's a good chance you'll see this, the dun skipper. It's, inch to inch and a quarter. But one thing you can see is mostly brown, but it does have some orange right around the stigma. But basically, it's a brown skipper. And July, end of June, July is a good time to see this there. And it can be pretty abundant in those areas where you find them. There's a lot of areas in eastern Washington where you'll find this in wet areas. And what really blew me away with this thing is last July 4th, I was working out in my yard, and a skipper came and landed on my verbena. And I looked at it, and I could hardly believe my eyes. It was a dun skipper in Gig Harbor. Now, don't even begin to ask me what it's doing there or how it got there. But it was there. It's the first time I've ever seen a dun skipper there. I don't even know if there's any records for the dun skipper in Pierce County. I don't know, but it was there, and it was amazing to see that. And I watched it for quite a while. I just sat there just nectaring on that verbena. I loved it, and so I could watch it for quite a while. But it was definitely a dun skipper. And the ventral surface is all very immaculate brown. Now, our last brown skipper, this is the one most of you are going to miss. You've got to really be a butterfly to see this guy. He's called a roadside skipper, and another really good name. Now, it's not descriptive, but it's really good because that's where you find it. If you want to find it, go alongside the road. That's where it is. The logging roads up into the Cascades, where you find it. This was found along a road. The one I have shown here was at the Sinlahecan, which is in Okanagan County. It's very common in eastern Washington, but it flies really close to the ground, and it's tiny. Look at here, 3/4 of an inch to an inch. Inch is stretching it. I mean, more like 3/4 of an inch. It's a tiny little thing that flies close to the ground, and most people are going to walk along the road not even paying attention. They think it's a fly or something. So it's really small, but it's really an interesting butterfly, because take a look at the ventral surface. I know the dorsal surface is too exciting. You've got your 3 spots here, and it's brown. But take a look at the ventral surface. Look at this. It almost looks like a hoary elephant. You got all this coloring here, this gray and white scaling, which makes it really kind of almost a purple cast to it. So it's kind of interesting. But this is it. This is our smallest little skipper. Well, I don't know if it's our very smallest, but it is small. And he flies really close to the ground. Look for him in June. Okay. This is it. I got through all the skippers. I can't believe it.